Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So I'm going to be doing a review on the Nikon Series Nikon Series E 28mm f2.8 vintage lens. This is actually the 100mm and I'm shooting on the 28mm right now. So wanted to go talk about how I think this is the perfect lens for a budget portrait photographer. So let's say you want to get a budget lens, something that's less than $100, maybe around $50 to maybe around $50 up to $100 max, and that's like mid condition. So I think this would be perfect if you want to start getting into street photography and portrait photography, because the lens is wide enough to capture like a wide shot of if you're doing street photography, and then at the same time it's good for portraits, mainly because it has like a really good aperture. So it has like an f2.8, so you're able to capture that nice like bokeh background. So I'm going to do some examples that I took pictures of. So let me share from my phone. I did some photo shoots with my wife, and some things that I've noticed with this lens is that a lot of the photos that I take, it's very soft, so it's not really sharp. So let me kind of show some pictures. It might be a little bit of user error, but let me show some photos. So I took some photos of my wife, and something I noticed is that it's very soft. So I mean, it's not that bad that it's soft. You do get like a nice separation, like depth of field from your subject in the background. So it's really easy to achieve. At the same time, you can kind of capture like a big picture. So that's something that I did like. And do note that I'm a beginner when it comes to photography. So definitely you can call me out. But some things that I did notice that I did like with this lens is that it captures like an element of personality in the picture. So one thing that I do like, it kind of warps a little bit of the background. So if we were to zoom into the background, you'll kind of notice that towards like the corners that it starts to kind of do like a circular kind of shape. So if you notice, like all the bokeh balls are start to turn like more ovally towards like the corners, and that's like something I didn't do in post-production. This is just straight from the camera. So that's something I found very interesting. So you can actually kind of notice it here around my model, my wife. So this one, just first glance, it looks like decently sharp, but I think that it could be sharper, of course, if I was using like a newer lens. But I actually do like that it's not producing such a sharp image, because in portrait photography you don't really want to capture every single pore of your model. So that's why I think this is a good lens, because for portrait photography is because it's not that sharp. So that's why I'm leaning more towards portrait photography, but you can do some street photography on the side with this. So if you were to zoom in, you'll kind of see that it's pretty soft, and you'll notice some chromatic aberration around the sunglasses. This has really bad chromatic aberration, so let me go to a photo where you'll really notice it. On first glance you don't really see it, but once you zoom in, you can really see, you can see around the hair, in my ear, there's really intense chromatic aberration. So that's something you need to be aware of. But the thing is that I don't really care too much about that, because for me, I'm just posting on social media such as Facebook and Instagram. So stuff like this chromatic aberration does not bother me at all. But that is just something to note like coming into it what to expect, but at the same time there's a lot of programs out there that can remove this in post-production. So that's just an additional step you would need to do, just so you know. So that's some things that I noticed, but it does a really good job in my opinion on like capturing like your subject in focus, background blurred out, looks great, not overly sharp, which I like, so I don't have to tone down the textures or anything. I can leave the textures as it is in post-production and then play with like the highlights and the shadows and stuff. So those were some photos that my wife took of me. And so let's see. All right, so this is another photo I took. So this is kind of testing more of like, I wanted to test like the sharpness of it, like how tack sharp can I get. And I noticed I can get pretty close to like a subject, pretty close to a subject. So like I really focused in on this leaf and it's pretty sharp, but it's definitely like not as sharp as like, let's say like all these current cameras. But we also have to remember this camera vintage lens is like literally from like the 80s, so like we have to take that into account. So that, you know, if you're trying to get a camera for like sharpness, definitely don't recommend this camera or camera lens. But if you are looking for a budget lens and then looking more towards like trying out portrait photography, this is definitely a great lens in my opinion. It's very cheap and to me it gets the job done. But let's talk about some cons of this. So you know that this is like a very vintage lens, old, so I'm shooting on a Canon T5i, so you have to get like a F mount to EF mount so I can just put it on my camera. That's not too much of a deal, but that's another thing that you do need to buy. Also, everything is manual. It's really difficult taking a photo of your subject. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like when you're taking a photo, it's really hard to nail that exposure because when you take a photo, you can't put things to auto. Like you have to set everything to manual if you want to take photos. So everything has to be 100% manual. But there is a workaround that I did, which is in video mode, it actually captures like what's happening through the lens even though everything's set to manual. So that's how I've been nailing all my exposure, is going into movie mode, setting my shutter speed, setting my ISO, and then I'm in control of the aperture manually. So that is a workaround that I did, and then switch to photography mode and then take my photos. But the thing is that this can be very annoying if you are like short on time and you just want to take a quick photo. You can't just snap that photo in auto. If you snap it in auto, your freaking ISO is going to be off the roof. Your freaking shutter speed is going to be super slow. Like your pictures are going to turn out super horrible. So you have to shoot everything in manual, set all your exposure, everything, boom, one. But the thing is that you have to do that in each spot that you are at. And then let's say it's a sunny day and there's clouds, like you have to continually like update like the brightness or your exposure, your ISO continually between each shot. So that's like really like the only downside that I found on this lens. But other than that, I think all the benefits outweigh the cons that I just mentioned. So it's going to be cheaper, less than $100, maybe around $50 on like eBay. No, I gotta remember what I just talked about. And so yeah, it's not that sharp, but at the same time, you don't want to have a super sharp lens when you're doing portrait photography, because you don't want to show every single speckle of pore on your face. So that's why I think this is a great lens. And additionally, has a really good build quality. This thing is built like a tank, and so it can take a beating, so you shouldn't be worried about like any of the mechanics like breaking, because it's like pretty much 100% metal. There's like absolutely no plastic whatsoever. So this lens is definitely going to last you a long time, definitely probably longer than you can live. And what else? I mentioned the cons, everything's manual, but as I said, I think this is a great lens if you're looking into portrait photography. And so out of 5 stars, would I rate this lens? I rated a good 4 out of 5 stars. The main reason why is just because it is such a good budget lens. It loses 1 star just because of how manual it is. It's, you know, you just always have to keep like checking your exposure, checking your ISO between each photo that you take, and so that can be very like annoying. And having to, this is a new case my wife just got, looks pretty cool. K for Kevin. All right, so final verdict is I recommend this lens. It's a great lens starting out. If you want to learn more about photography, this is going to force you to learn. So that's why there's another added benefit is I feel like this lens has made me a better photographer, and then it also made me like better at like understanding like things such as shutter speed and controlling your like your ISO, and then using shutter speed as like your best friend instead of like your enemy. So these are some great tips, so definitely recommend this. If you found this video helpful and you do plan on picking it up, probably check out the link down below. Like, comment, and subscribe for more videos. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.